Hi, my name is Michael Smith. I'm a numerologist, psychic medium, and author. In this video, I'd like to cover some of the more common questions people have about numerology and my take on things, starting with how I got into numerology in the first place. That actually happened quite a bit later in life for me, and the catalyst was a sudden spiritual awakening I had in 2014 when I was 51. My career up until that point was as an engineer and statistician in various manufacturing industries, basically a numbers guy focused on production output and minimizing cost. But over the course of 30 years in that role, my work became increasingly unfulfilling and often quite mercenary, from downsizing labor and squeezing suppliers for cost reductions to mothballing entire plants. My stress level likewise rose to the point of dangerously high blood pressure and back-to-back bouts of pneumonia. With no real spiritual beliefs back then either, I was physically, emotionally, and spiritually a mess, really. Then, one night I was woken by the voice of my brother calling my name, a brother who had passed a few years earlier. And then, in the following days, I started getting clairvoyant images and messages from a number of loved ones and friends in spirit, as well as little premonitions of things that would actually happen days later. All of this totally shook my worldview about mortality and my spiritual skepticism, but something also clicked inside me that changed the trajectory of my life. All I knew is that I could no longer do the work I was doing, so I quit my job despite having no clue what was happening to me or why, or what I was going to do next. But within weeks, my anxiety went away, along with my health issues, and my zest for life returned. I felt on track with myself for really the first time in my life. This also triggered a keen interest in everything spiritual, but especially numerology, which has become my passion ever since. Numerology is based on the idea that numbers represent not only physical quantities, but have energetic qualities too, as does anything that can be described by numbers, such as dates, ages, and addresses, and even words and names based on the numerical positions of letters in the alphabet. These number qualities cover the full cycle of themes we can experience in life, much like the archetype themes of the zodiac in astrology. Your personal numerology is all based on two numbers, your date of birth and your birth name, as this is what uniquely defined you from the very start of your life, and is therefore the personal vibe you always carry with you. And just as numbers are both quantities and qualities, so are we. We are physical, spiritual beings here to learn and master that duality. So, to understand the bilingual language of duality, we need a system fluent in both, which is exactly what numerology is. After all, it's through cycles of experience that everything and everyone interacts, learns, and grows. So, how well we navigate those cycles determines how fulfilling and enlightened our lives can be. Numerology provides a roadmap for that journey that's easy to follow and tailored to you. A roadmap that highlights what to expect so you can make the most of the trip. Numerology is growing in popularity for a couple of main reasons, I think. First, I would say that the pandemic has definitely had a big influence on that, especially in the last few years. The social isolation we all experienced and general anxiety about the future caused many people to search for ways of regaining some control and direction in their lives. And personal guidance tools such as numerology, astrology, and meditation are great for that. Also, they're self-discovery practices that require lots of quiet alone time to learn, reflect upon, and integrate, the very conditions the pandemic happened to create. Many made the most of that downtime, I think, and it's definitely apparent on social media in the quickly growing content and traffic on numerology sites, videos, and blogs, mine included. The other factor contributing to the increased interest in numerology is demographic, I think. The younger generation is very tech savvy, so they can easily explore numerology online, most of which is online now anyway. But they also enjoy more freedom of expression and independence of thought than ever, definitely than my generation did. This freedom of spiritual exploration seems to have embraced numerology with open arms and given it renewed relevance from an admittedly somewhat dusty decline in recent decades. And it's wonderful to see, because numerology really is a powerful and timeless tool that's greatly underestimated. The first common misconception about numerology is that your life path number is all you really need to know, just like your sun sign is misconstrued as all you need in astrology. The life path number is only one piece of the numerological puzzle that is you. The internet and pop culture have actually done a disservice to numerology and astrology, trying to condense these comprehensive tools into little sound bites that are easily consumed but have little actual substance. To do a person's numerology right is to do a full chart. Another false assumption is that you can predict the future, including things like winning lottery numbers. Numerology, like astrology, only reveal our predisposition for certain personality traits, motivations, and experiences based on our personal vibe and outside influences. It does not predict specific outcomes with certainty. We always have free will and our future isn't cast in stone. That said, if winning the lottery is actually something that would help you learn something important about yourself and your life path, then you are automatically more likely to be presented circumstances to buy the right ticket at the right time. But again, it's up to you to trust your intuition to do so when it feels right. Where numerology comes in is that it helps you understand your true self and your intuitive compass. Then there's the misconception that some numbers are lucky and some are unlucky. Numbers and the numerological themes with which they resonate are just that, themes with a range of potential expressions, neither lucky or unlucky. In the vibrational world, there's no judgment of good versus bad, only contrast. It's us who attach those biased and limiting labels to things. There are two numbers which are the most important in numerology, as all other numbers in your chart are derived from them. These are your life path number, obtained from your birth date, and your expression number, from your birth name. Your life path number represents your main purpose, while your expression number is how you can best express yourself in pursuit of that purpose, basically your calling. The next most important numbers, I would say, are your three growth cycles, soul number and personality number. Your growth cycles are the three specific themes through which your overall life path theme will be explored in each third of your life and are given by your birth month, day, and year, respectively. Your soul number, derived from the vowels in your name, reflects your inner self and how you feel inside, while your personality number, from the consonants in your name, is your outer self and how others perceive you. Your life path number is derived from the sum of your month, day, and year of birth, and again is the overall theme you're here to explore in this lifetime. However, it actually plays out over three stages called growth cycles, corresponding to the month, day, and year as separate sequential themes which complement each other. And just as the three numbers of your birth date mathematically add to give your life path number, the three themes of your growth cycles vibrationally add to give your life direction and meaning. Your month of birth is the first growth cycle and represents the theme that's emphasized in youth and the types of experiences you will tend to encounter from birth until about late 20s, early 30s. That goes along with the idea that in our youth that we have less life experience and are therefore more subject to the monthly push and pull of natural cycles such as zodiac signs and the lunar cycle. Next, your day of birth is your second growth cycle and takes center stage in your main working years, from the end of youth to your mid-50s, early 60s. It's during this busy time that your focus narrows to the daily responsibilities of juggling career, family, and personal details. Finally, your third growth cycle is given by your year of birth and is the prominent theme for the rest of your life. With lots of life experience now under your belt, your focus matures and broadens, and you're less influenced by the monthly and daily fluctuations in the world around you. You basically know yourself better and are more set in your ways. Unlike traditional Western or Pythagorean numerology of ancient Greece, which follows the base 10 cycle from 0 to 9, or the even older Chaldean system of Babylonia, which excluded 9 as being considered too sacred, base 12 numerology follows an expanded cycle from 0 to 11. However, the base 12 approach didn't even exist back in 2014 when I first started studying numerology. In fact, numerology is one of the few metaphysical systems around that didn't adopt the widely accepted intuition about 12 as the fundamental structure of nature, consciousness, and the learning cycle of spiritual enlightenment. But I suspect that's simply because the number system in use in Greece at the time of Pythagoras was base 10. So I ended up adapting traditional base 10 numerology to base 12, which was actually quite straightforward as it only involved adding the missing number themes for 10 and 11 to the existing base 10 cycle from 0 to 9. Probably the biggest change is just getting used to counting in 12s and treating 10 and 11 as single-digit numbers after a lifetime of counting in 10s. For instance, the number 17 in base 10 of one cycle of 10 plus 7 equals 15 in base 12, one cycle of 12 plus 5, which seems a little weird at first until you think of it in terms of how we already count time on a clock face. 17 hours into the day is 5 p.m., or 5 hours past noon. But other than that, the switch to base 12 doesn't fundamentally change how numerology works or how your numbers are calculated. What it does do, in my experience, is significantly improve the accuracy of numerology readings versus base 10 for people whose lives and personalities I know well, such as family members, friends, and well-known celebrities. It not only brings numerology finally in line with other spiritual tools such as astrology, but also with the science of music, color, and light. How an octave in music consists of a 12-note chromatic scale, how the artist's color wheel consists of 12 basic colors from which all design can be derived, and how all the color frequencies of the visible spectrum of light combine to create white light. So, by aligning numerology to the base 12 vibrational structure of nature, we can most easily decode how everything in nature works and resonates at an energetic level, including ourselves. But perhaps most important of all, base 12 puts the 6 of love at the very center and heart of the energetic cycle, where I feel it belongs, as do all major religions. Thus, it's through the physically focused themes from 1 to 5 that we search for love, and through the spiritually focused themes from 7 to 11 that we expand and illuminate love. Which, by the way, is why I also think the zodiac cycle of astrology should start at Capricorn and the winter solstice, rather than Aries and the spring equinox. It would place the loving sign of Cancer at the very heart of the astrological year and at its maximum illumination of the summer solstice. Coincidentally, even the glyph symbol for Cancer looks just like two sixes embracing, of the 6 of love experiencing itself through the 2 of duality, of masculine and feminine imbalance, of the giving and receiving of love. Numerology and astrology are somewhat related in that both are based on a cycle of archetypal themes which energetically imprint on us at birth. However, where astrology looks at the positions of the planets, zodiac signs, and houses relative to our time and place of birth, numerology instead looks at the numbers of our birth date and birth name when letters are given numbered positions in the alphabet. Another big difference is in terms of structure. Astrology is based on cycles of 12, 12 signs, 12 houses, and 12 planets and luminaries, if you include Pluto and the asteroid Chiron. Whereas traditional numerology follows a cycle of 10, the numbers from 0 to 9. In other words, where astrology follows the actual base 12 behavior of the sky, of 12 laps of the moon around the Earth per cycle of the Earth around the sun, numerology historically followed an arbitrary and artificial base 10 counting system, and which again is why I prefer the base 12 approach to numerology. Aside from that, many of the major elements of your astrology chart do actually have a related counterpart in numerology. Your rising sign or ascendant, your life purpose, and the sign that was rising over the eastern horizon at the time and place of birth relates to your life path number, your date of birth, and again your life purpose. The planet that rules your ascendant, the direction your life is steered in pursuing your purpose, relates to your expression number, or your birth name in numerology, and how you can best express your calling. Your rising sign and its ruling planet taken together equate to your maturity number in numerology, which is the sum of your life path and expression number mathematically, and your focus later in life. And just as your rising sign and its ruling planet are often considered the two most important elements in astrology, your life path and expression number are the two biggies in numerology. Your sun sign, your outer self and how you shine, the sign of the sun, the sign the sun was in at your birth, relates to your personality number in numerology, the consonants of your birth name, and how you appear to others. Likewise, your moon sign in astrology, your inner self and emotions, and the sign the moon was in at birth, relates to your soul number in numerology, which are the vowels of your birth name and how you feel inside. The Saturn return, the 30-year cycle of that taskmaster planet Saturn in astrology, returning to the sign it was in when you were born, and which gives you a shake to be more responsible, disciplined, and focused, corresponds to the start of your second growth cycle, or your birthday, and the daily focus needed during your busy working years. And again at the start of your third growth cycle, or your birth year, around the age of 60, when your perspective further matures and broadens later in life. Last but not least, signs with no planets in them at your birth are equivalent to what are called karmic lessons in numerology, number energies that were missing from the letters of your birth name, and therefore are themes you'll find foreign to you and thus challenging to learn. Now, why numerology works is a question I really wrestled with early on, especially with my number 10 life path and Scorpio rising sign, which are all about awareness, discernment, and questioning the reason and motivation behind everything. This prove it to believe it vibe has definitely been a major theme in my life, from rejecting spirituality for 50 years, despite my father being an Anglican minister, to a 30-year career as a mechanical engineer and stats guy, building and counting stuff that I had to be able to see and touch. And even after my spiritual wake-up call in 2014 and mediumship abilities proving to me without a doubt that our consciousness does live on, I still couldn't get on board with numerology until I could rationalize it logically too. For me, that begins with the fact that both science and numerology share the same universal language of mathematics, which is all about numbers and their relationships to each other. Math also shows us that numbers can both be real as physical points along a one-dimensional number line, but also imaginary as potential points on a two-dimensional circle rotating through that line. Together, these are called complex numbers. This validates the idea of numbers as having a dual nature, as both physical discrete quantities, but also as unmanifested continuous probabilities, which still possess the energetic quality of each number. This is backed up by Einstein's famous equation E = mc squared, which prove that energy and matter are just different expressions of the same thing, and also by what's called wave-particle duality of quantum mechanics, in which particles like photons or electrons can behave as particles or vibrational waves. But the really significant thing about this is that they only manifest as physical particles and in a specific location when being observed. Otherwise, they remain moving in their undefined wave-like state. What this means is that it's the very presence of an observer, of the intention to see something physical, that coaxes a particle out of its vibrational indecision. Nevertheless, that particle of mass retains its vibrational energetic quality, again by virtue of mass and energy being equivalent and able to transform back and forth. But that still doesn't explain why numbers themselves would have the energetic qualities that numerology claims they do, specifically a cycle of 12 archetypal themes from the 0 of potential to the 11 of illumination that sound more like the stages of a mythical hero's journey than anything scientific. That explanation I discovered quite unexpectedly by going right back to the basics of why numbers, or anything for that matter, should exist at all. Again, in classic defiant Scorpio fashion. If we start with the idea of nothingness, of an empty neutral state, then for anything to come into existence as real, there would logically also need to be created at its unmanifested opposite to maintain that neutrality. So, starting from the simplest possible form, that would begin with a zero-dimensional point and its unmanifested potential to equal things out. In turn, the simplest expression of a zero-dimensional point would be a 1D line, created by the movement of that point in any one direction. However, that line would need to be centered on the original starting point to again maintain neutrality. Likewise, the simplest neutral expression of a 1D line would be a 2D circle, formed by rotating the line about itself. This circle represents the fundamental number cycle centered about the origin, the same cycle of real and imaginary numbers I mentioned, and upon which mathematics is based. But what number cycle would reality logically choose, as it could actually be anything, provided it's an even number to keep that neutral geometry? From the simplest of all, the base 2 or binary cycle, from 0 to 1 and back again, to an infinitely complex cycle of all possible numbers. So here's where I suggest base 12 comes into the picture. That's because the base 12 cycle offers the best balance between simplicity and versatility while still maintaining a neutral or even number geometry overall. Or in mathematical terms, base 12 has the most factors for its size. That is, 12 can be divided in 5 different ways: in half, thirds, quarters, sixths, or twelfths, whereas the next simpler and more compact cycle of below base 12 would be base 10, and what mainstream science follows. But base 10 can only be divided 3 ways: in half, fifths, or tenths, and thus is much less versatile than base 12, albeit slightly more compact. Conversely, the next more versatile cycle above base 12, with 7 factors, would be base 24, but at the cost of much greater complexity and size. So that's ultimately why I think numerology follows a cycle of 12 energies. Reality is mathematically structured that way. But there's an even simpler form of the base 12 cycle that reality could logically choose, as a cycle of 4 prime numbers. Prime numbers are whole numbers that cannot be divided any further, such as 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, and 11. And here I'm including 1 as a prime number, contrary to the illogical mainstream practice of excluding it. Go Scorpio. And since every whole number is either a prime or the product of primes, they're considered the fundamental building blocks of mathematics. So, in the case of the base 12 cycle, where prime positions 2 and 3 essentially create the initial base 12 cycle itself, its structure of 2 times 2 times 3 equals 12. Positions 1, 5, 7, and 11 are where primes can occur in any subsequent cycle. And where those 4 prime positions are expressed as a vibrational cycle over time, a beautiful double helix standing wave is generated that looks just like a cycle of DNA in 3D, or like butterfly wings from the front view perspective of us as an observer. So to make a long story short, the geometry of each of the 12 quantum positions within that prime vibration, including amplitude, proportion, and direction of spin relative to us, exactly reflects that numbers theme in ancient base 12 numerology, which, by the way, also reflects exactly what quantum physics has found to be the structure of reality itself, of 12 fundamental particles or vibrational states, each defined by 3 qualities of probability amplitude, polarity, and angular momentum or spin. So this not only speaks to the scientific validity of a base 12 vibrational universe, but also to the keen intuition of the founders of numerology and astrology thousands of years ago in identifying the same number themes so accurately. So, whenever we encounter a number or anything that can be expressed by numbers, whether it be a person, a planet, or a pop song, we resonate with its vibrational geometry and will feel its influence. Likewise, whatever we focus our attention and thoughts upon, we resonate with the unmanifested probability of outcomes matching those archetype qualities, and will attract them into our reality, which in turn would explain why the law of attraction works. So that to me is ultimately why astrology and numerology work, in my opinion. Each of us is like a musical instrument of 12 notes, but tuned to our unique identity, that of our birth date and name. And every thought, word, and deed either resonates or clashes with that. So it's up to us to make choices that are true to ourselves, and numerology simply helps us make more resonant ones. Thanks so much for watching.